Here's a review for Andor Season 2. Yeah, this review is unfortunately pretty f***ing late given that this show actually ended about 3 weeks ago now. But in between when this show finished and when I'm doing this review now, there were like 3 different movie reviews I had to do and 2 different ranking videos to get through. But I wanted to get a review out for this show given it was one of the handful of high-profile streaming shows I made a priority to check out this year. Despite this review coming out late, I'm not going to go deep into any black and white story spoilers, so you don't have to worry about me ruining the show for you if you haven't checked it out. Now, the arc of Cassian Andor through Season 1 and Season 2 is about Cassian Andor, the character we saw in Rogue One, and builds up towards him becoming a rebel hero and the characters around him dealing with the hardships of life under the Empire. Now, Season 1 of this show, released in 2022, was one of the rare, non-controversial, dare I say, acclaimed Disney Star Wars products. The idea for this show was to be a highly mature Star Wars series, with minimal fantasy-type elements like the Force or lightsabers, and to feel like a real drama, just set in a galaxy far, far away. I think Season 1 accomplished this in its direction, vision, and tone with great success. It really did feel unlike any other Star Wars product. But maybe I'm alone in this, but I think people were too quick to suck the show's and not point out legit issues. I think the show had just too many episodes where it was just flat out boring, poorly paced, uneventful, while at times just throwing out a little bit too much information to keep track of. I think the show was absolutely great when it was keeping things relatively simple, like Cassian invading the Empire, or the prison arc. That was just flat out phenomenal. But I can't say I loved the season in its entirety. I was hoping giving it a rewatch before Season 2 debuted would help me align with the critically acclaimed label, but my thoughts were only strengthened. Season 2 released 2.5 years after Season 1, and had an interesting release schedule, having a total of 12 episodes, but releasing 3 weekly in a story arc type fashion. Andor Season 2 sees the continued plight of society under the Empire, and the budding of the rebellion that will save the galaxy. Much of the same praise that I could give for Season 1, I could say for Season 2. Despite my flaws with the original season of the show, with that season and this season, I really do appreciate the direction and vision executed for this show. The big question for me, though, was if this series could improve on the storytelling and uneventfulness of Season 1. Like Season 1, Season 2 is just loaded with characters and arcs, which gives all the episodes plenty to work off of. You have Cassian and Bix, the Gorman Front, Empire officers Dedra and Cyril, Luthen's Rebellion, and Senator Mothma. In the big picture, I like the story arcs here much better. Just the storytelling, eventfulness, and most importantly, the payoffs were really good. There were a lot of moments where I did feel really tense and my eyes were glued to the TV and how a scene was going to play out. That is, for any scene that didn't involve the character that was in Rogue One, but these scenes were still effective. There were a decent amount of those whoa moments, the type of moments where I was like, whoa, I gotta see what the tweets are about this right now. Having rape in Star Wars is wild as shit, but if you're gonna do it, a mature show like Andor would be the place to have it. If this rape scene was in Skeleton Crew, the reaction would justifiably be, what the f***? My jaw dropped when this scene happened. It was just so vicious, raw, and brutal. And poor Bix, she just couldn't catch a break in this series after how she was tortured in Season 1. And now a rape scene. That actress is beautiful though. Cassian definitely has a reason to be happy at times here. Happiness is fleeting in this show though, because life under the Empire understandably sucks. Hardly any humor in this show, appropriately so as the tone was meant to be serious. Most of the laughs came from K2SO, but probably the biggest laughs of the entire series that I got was from the Empire power couple in Dedra and Cyril. I wasn't sure where the show was going to go with these two after Season 1, but showing what romance looked for a couple of dry, awkward Empire officials was just too hilarious. The dinner scene the two have with Cyril's mom is just too hilarious. Dedra, for me, was the standout character of the whole series. The performance and arc of the character were just great, but where the character ultimately ends up was a powerful, lasting image from this show. But I didn't love every arc or character here. I was so bored by a majority of the Mon Mothma scenes until it gets to her transition into a full rebel hero. And Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen just sounds drunk in every scene, and his scenes are pretty repetitive. I did finally warm up to the character during his major section towards the end. But by the end of the show, I absolutely loved Cassian Andor himself. Being a man of action, fierce determination, and excellent portrayal by Diego Luna. Now, this show made an interesting creative choice to be separated into arcs, which took place over 3 episodes, and they were all released simultaneously 1 week at a time. Arc 1 showcased where all the characters were now after Season 1. I liked the turf war trouble that Cassian found himself in. After that, though, unfortunately, there was a decent amount that reminded me of the type of pacing and exposition-heavy scenes that I wasn't crazy about in Season 1. But the episode that was unintentional, or maybe even partially intentionally hilarious, was that romantic interplay between Surreal and Dedra. The end of Season 3 has the rape scene that's just jaw-dropping in the context of seeing it in Star Wars. But this scene and how Cassian's rescue of Bix played out led to a good and solid opening arc of Season 2. Arc 2 was boring as f***. It was so poorly paced, nauseating dialogue, and nothing of note happened besides one of the space lesbians getting killed. Which, yawn, who cares? There were still some filmmaking qualities and performances I still enjoyed, but I was beyond bored for a lot of these episodes, leading me to think, oh hell no, this was not good at all.
Oh, hell no!
After that second arc, this third arc was going to need a big quality turnaround for me, and that thankfully happened with Arc 3, specifically with the Insurrection episode that took place. This scene really pushed the limits of action and tragedy to be truly special. And then the Mon Mothma focus episode at the Senate was great as well. It was an excellent 3 episodes, particularly the final 2.
Excellent.
The final arc continued this upward trajectory for me, putting some notable characters in some very high-stakes situations, and it was also great to have K2SO back. Given how Rogue One plays out, this would be the only ever opportunity to have him back, and they certainly made great use of him here. It is noteworthy that this show didn't end with some grand climax like a high-budget franchise show might, but that ended up being appropriate given how this leads basically directly into Rogue One, and it was a perfect ending in a pre-Rogue One set closure kind of way. It also added some sad closure for Cassian in terms of the loose ends from his relationship with Bix. This managed to push the final arc into the level of legendary. Right after Season 2 finished, I naturally watched Rogue One, and it definitely changes things in the context of Cassian's sacrifice. Rogue One was already a bonkers, legendary, fantastic movie, so anything that adds any extra context and gives me a reason to rewatch it is okay with me. Naturally, given the story of Rogue One and where this series leaves off, there won't be an Andor Season 3, but props to this series for being one of the few Disney Star Wars products not to be reviled by fans, so yay I guess. It just feels like a lot of extra effort was put into this show, compared to something like Kenobi, which I also rewatched recently after Revenge of the Sith's 20th anniversary re-release. But that show, along with some other Star Wars show products, come across as very simple by comparison, but that's just the more mature filmmaking nature of Andor playing out, I suppose. But that's what's great about genres of shows, is that you can have something for Star Wars that's more geared for kids like Skeleton Crew and even Kenobi to some degree based on my recent rewatch. Then you have Andor, which is definitely for more mature audiences and most certainly not a kid's show. And then The Mandalorian, which is mostly a nice balance of the two. Season 3 though. But Andor Season 2 just continues what has been and what will be an unbelievable year for high-profile streaming service shows. With Daredevil Born Again and Andor already have come out, you soon got Stranger Things, the final season, and Wednesday Season 2 coming, and then The Last of Us Season 2, which just finished. Look out for that review, hopefully soon. So that'll do it for this review of Andor Season 2. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching.